The sound of my wife's success was a specific kind of noise. It was the clinking of wine glasses that cost more per stem than my favorite flannel shirt. It was the low hum of conversation, a word soup of stock options, quarterly reports, and anecdotes from business lounges in cities I'd never seen. And it was all happening inside my house. Our house, I should say. Our house in Rock Haven, Maine, perched on a granite ledge overlooking a moody slice of the Atlantic. But tonight, it didn't feel like mine. The wide plank pine floors I'd personally sanded and sealed felt foreign under the feet of these strangers in their polished loafers. The air, usually smelling of salt and sawdust from my boat workshop, was now thick with competing perfumes and the scent of fancy cheese I couldn't pronounce. This was Genevieve's party, a celebration of her promotion to Vice President of Northeast Operations for a massive biotech firm. She was a star, and this was her coronation. She floated through the crowd, a glass of champagne seeming like a natural extension of her hand. In her sharp, tailored navy blue dress, she looked like one of them. She looked powerful and sleek and a little bit dangerous, like a beautiful shark gliding through placid waters. I felt like a piece of driftwood that had washed ashore. My role tonight was simple. Play the proud, supportive husband, the rugged, authentic craftsman who grounded her high-flying corporate life. It was a role I was growing to resent. Our 16-year-old daughter, Astrid, had made a brief, ghost-like appearance an hour ago, grabbing a sparkling water and a fistful of shrimp before retreating to the safety of her bedroom with a mumbled, "Congrats, Mom." She saw the same thing I did. This wasn't our world. I tried to mingle. I really did. A guy with a painfully tight haircut and a watch that could fund my workshop for a year clapped me on the shoulder. "Rowan, man of the hour," he boomed. "You must be so proud. Jen's a killer, an absolute killer." I mumbled something about being very proud, my calloused thumb tracing the rim of my beer bottle. My hands, stained with varnish and nicked from 100 sharp tools, felt brutish and clumsy holding the delicate bottle. Everyone here talked with their hands, gesturing to make points about market penetration and synergy. My hands knew how to shape wood, mend nets, and coax a stubborn engine back to life. They didn't know how to do this. Genevieve caught my eye from across the room and gave me a brilliant, rehearsed smile. It was her public smile, the one she used on clients and board members. It didn't quite reach her eyes. The Genevieve I'd married could light up a room with a laugh that started deep in her belly. This version of her lit it up with sheer force of will. The first real crack in my carefully constructed denial appeared in the form of a man named Julian. I'd heard his name before in passing. He was her direct superior, the one who'd championed her for the promotion. He moved with the frictionless ease of a man who'd never had to fix his own engine or wonder if a client was going to pay on time. He cornered Genevieve near the fireplace, his hand resting on the small of her back for just a second too long. It was a proprietary touch, a gesture that said, "We're on the same team," but it felt like more. "I was just telling everyone about our disastrous trip to Boston last month," he said, his voice a smooth baritone that cut through the chatter. Genevieve laughed, a lighter, more girlish sound than I'd heard from her in months. "Oh God, Julian, don't remind them about the fire alarm," she said, playfully swatting his arm. He leaned in closer, their heads nearly touching. "It wasn't my fault the concierge mistook my urgent request for a room with a spark as a pyrotechnic emergency," he murmured. For her ears only, but I was close enough to catch it. They both erupted in shared conspiratorial laughter. A spark. My stomach twisted. It was a small thing, an inside joke, but it was a story I hadn't heard. The disastrous trip to Boston had been described to me as 2 days of back-to-back meetings and a miserable room service dinner. There was no mention of fire alarms or sparks. I watched them, a perfect corporate couple, framed by the stone hearth I'd built with my own 2 hands. And for the first time, I felt a cold, sharp sliver of fear. This wasn't just success changing my wife. Something else was happening, and I was the only person in the room who wasn't in on the joke. Just as I was mentally retreating to the quiet solitude of my workshop, Genevieve tapped a spoon against her champagne flute. The sound, sharp and clear, cut through the noise, and a wave of silence washed over the room. Every face turned towards her, beaming with practiced admiration. She stood by the fireplace, the low light catching the highlights in her professionally styled hair. Her smile was incandescent, a 1,000-watt beacon of corporate success. "I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight to celebrate with me," she began, her voice smooth and confident. "This promotion isn't just mine. It belongs to the whole team, To everyone who's put in the long hours and believed in our vision." A polite murmur of appreciation went through the room. Julian beamed at her, looking every bit the proud mentor. My beer suddenly tasted bitter. Then she turned her spotlight on me. "And most of all," she said, her voice softening just enough to sound intimate, "I need to thank my amazing husband, Rowan." Every head in the room swiveled in my direction. I felt 100 pairs of eyes land on me, pinning me against the wall like a specimen. I was no longer a person, I was an exhibit, the supportive husband. "He's my rock," Genevieve continued, her words echoing the very cliches I'd been mocking in my head. "He keeps our home and our family grounded while I'm off chasing these crazy dreams. I truly couldn't do any of this without you, honey." The words were perfect, a beautifully crafted tribute, but they were hollow. I was the anchor that let her ship sail away. I was the foundation of a house someone else was living in. The applause that followed was quick and crisp, a formal acknowledgement rather than a genuine outpouring of warmth. They all smiled at me, these men and women in their expensive clothes with smiles that were just a baring of teeth. They were applauding the idea of me, the convenient narrative of the simple craftsman husband that made Genevieve's story more compelling. They weren't applauding me. I felt my face flush, a hot wave of humiliation and anger washing over me. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. "Dad!" A voice cut through the suffocating politeness. Astrid was standing at the top of the stairs, her face a mask of teenage panic. "Dad, you have to come now. It's my laptop." She clutched the railing, her eyes wide. "It's making this horrible buzzing sound, and my history paper is due tomorrow. I think it's about to explode." The sudden, genuine drama of it shattered the party's smooth veneer. Several people chuckled. I had never been so grateful for a fabricated tech emergency in my life. "Sorry," I mumbled to the people around me, setting my beer down. "Duty calls." I gave Genevieve a quick, tight nod, and I could see a flicker of annoyance in her eyes before she smoothed it over with a look of wifely concern. Astrid saw it too. She understood completely. As I escaped the living room and headed for the stairs, I heard Julian's voice rise above the renewed chatter. "And we're not letting her rest on her laurels," he announced grandly. "To celebrate this next chapter, Jen and I will be representing the company at the Global Innovator Summit in Lake Tahoe next week. It's the event of the year." The news hit me like a physical blow between the shoulder blades. Another trip. With him. To an exclusive summit that sounded less like work and more like a couple's retreat. I didn't look back. I just kept climbing the stairs, my daughter's fabricated crisis feeling more real than any of the empty congratulations downstairs. The party noise faded behind me, replaced by the furious, silent pounding in my own head. The silence that followed the last car pulling away was heavier than any of the party noise had been. It was a vacuum filled with the ghosts of conversations, the cloying scent of wine and perfume, and the sight of half-empty glasses scattered like casualties on every available surface. Genevieve kicked off her brutally elegant heels with a sigh, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet house. She sank onto the cream-colored sofa, a queen surveying the messy aftermath of her triumph. "God, I'm exhausted," she murmured, running a hand through her perfectly coiffed hair. "We are definitely hiring a housekeeper. I can't deal with this on top of everything else." Her words landed on me like a spark on dry tinder. It wasn't just about cleaning up a party. It was another brick in the wall she was building between her world and mine, another piece of our shared life being outsourced to a stranger. "We don't need a housekeeper, Jen," I said, my voice low and tight as I started collecting empty glasses. "I can handle it." She waved a dismissive hand, not even looking at me. "Rowan, don't be ridiculous. Your time is better spent in your workshop. My time is better spent not doing this." The casual superiority in her tone, the way she categorized and dismissed our lives, finally broke the dam of my resentment. "Is that what this is about?" I shot back, placing the glasses on the counter with a loud clatter. "Outsourcing everything. First the yard work, then the cooking, now the house. What's next, me?" She finally turned to look at me, an eyebrow arched in irritation. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about tonight. I saw you with Julian." "Everyone saw you, leaning in, laughing at some secret joke about Sparks in Boston. His hand on your back. It was a performance, Jen, and I was just part of the audience." The elegant, tired woman on the couch vanished. In her place was someone sharp and cold, her posture instantly rigid. The shrewish woman who'd been hiding under the expensive dress was out. "Flirting? Oh, for God's sake, Rowan, grow up!" she snapped, her voice losing all its earlier warmth. That is called networking. It's building rapport. It's how business is done in a world you clearly don't understand. I understand what it looks like, I fired back, my voice rising. And now this Innovators Summit in Lake Tahoe? With him? How much innovating are you really planning on doing for a week? Her eyes flashed with fury. This trip is the single most important opportunity of my career. This is my job, Rowan. The job that pays the mortgage on this house, that pays for Astrid's private school, the job that lets you spend your days playing with wood in your little seaside shed. The cruelty of it stole my breath. She had weaponized her success, turning it into a cudgel to beat me with. This isn't about me and Julian, she spat, standing up to face me. This is about your own insecurity. You were skulking in the corner all night, looking like some fisherman who wandered into the wrong yacht club because you can't stand that my colleagues have more to talk about than tides and tackle. You're intimidated, so you invent this pathetic drama to make yourself the hero of your own sad story. A loud thud from the stairs made us both freeze. Astrid stood there, her backpack already slung over her shoulder, her face pale with a mixture of anger and hurt. She had her headphones in her hands, and it was clear she'd heard every poisonous word. I can't listen to this, she said, her voice trembling with disgust. She didn't look at either of us. Her gaze was fixed on the front door, on escape. Astrid, wait! Genevieve started, her voice suddenly losing its sharp edge. But it was too late. Astrid just shook her head and walked past us, her boots heavy on the pine floors. The slam of the front door echoed through the house, a definitive, final sound that left us standing in a silence more profound and damaging than any of our shouting. The party was officially over. A text from Astrid buzzed on the nightstand at 2 a.m. Staying at Chloe's? Don't worry. Don't worry, it was the only instruction I was incapable of following. I spent the rest of the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. The silence was an accusation. Sometime before dawn, I heard the faint rumble of the garage door and the quiet crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Genevieve was gone, off to work without a word, without even the pretense of a shared breakfast. The marital battlefield had been abandoned. I didn't sleep. At 5 a.m., I gave up trying and went to the only place that made sense, my workshop. The salty air and the familiar scent of cedar and sawdust washed over me, a welcome antidote to the stale perfume of the party. My current project, a bespoke humidor, sat on the main workbench, waiting for its final touches. It was an intricate piece, crafted from a single continuous block of bird's-eye maple, with delicate rosewood splines reinforcing the mitred corners. It wasn't just a box, it was a puzzle, a testament to precision and patience. The customer was a man named Arthur Vance, a semi-retired media mogul who owned half the local newspapers and radio stations in the state. He was an old-school titan who appreciated things made by hand. I was meticulously sanding the final coat of tung oil, the wood glowing under my hands when the door creaked open. It was Mr. Vance himself, arriving just as the sun broke over the water. He was a broad man in a worn tweed jacket, his face weathered by years of sailing. He didn't say a word at first, just walked over to the workbench. He ran a hand over the humidor's surface, his fingers tracing the nearly invisible joinery. It's got soul, Rowan, he said, his voice a low rumble. You can feel the hours in it. You can feel the care. They don't make things like this anymore. Coming from him, it was the highest form of praise. Coming after last night, it was a lifeline. He paid me, his check more than generous, then paused, looking out at the choppy harbor. I didn't just come to pick this up, he said, turning back to me. I've just acquired a boat, a 1960s wooden trawler, the Nor'easter. She's beautiful, but the interior is a wreck. I'm restoring her from the keel up. I want you to do the cabinetry. I must have looked stunned because he smiled. Not just a few cabinets, son. I want you to do the whole thing. The galley, the main salon, the berths. I want this level of craftsmanship, he said, tapping the humidor, throughout the entire vessel. It's a huge order. Probably a year's worth of work, maybe more. Name your price. I want it done right. My mind reeled. A year's worth of guaranteed work. A legacy project. A chance to pour my soul into something magnificent. Something that would ride the waves long after I was gone. It was the kind of validation I hadn't realized I was starving for. Genevieve's words from the night before, your little seaside shed, echoed in my ears, but now they sounded petty and small. I had been offered a kingdom. Yes, Mr. Vance, absolutely. I'd be honored. After he left, I stood alone in my workshop, the check sitting on the bench next to the humidor. The air hummed with possibility. This changed everything. It gave me leverage. It gave me options. But as the initial euphoria subsided, a cold reality set in. My marriage was a ship taking on water, listing badly to one side. And while I now had a lifeboat all to myself, I still hadn't decided if I wanted to save the ship, abandon it, or simply stand on the deck and watch it sink. The house was empty when I got back from the workshop, save for the lingering tension from the night before. Astrid had danced, a welcome excuse for her to avoid the minefield our home had become. For a moment, I considered retreating back to my shed, back to the comforting scent of cedar and the solid promise of Mr. Vance's project. But that would be a retreat. That would be admitting defeat. Instead, a stubborn flicker of hope, or maybe just pride, pushed me into the kitchen. I would try. I would make one more effort to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I found 2 thick fillets of haddock in the fridge, fresh from the docks this morning. I dredged them in flour, sizzled them in a hot pan with butter and lemon, and roasted some potatoes to go with them. It was a simple meal, an honest meal, a Rowan meal. It was the kind of dinner we used to share on Tuesday nights before her world started accelerating into an orbit I couldn't follow. When Genevieve walked in an hour later, she looked surprised to see me there, a plate of food waiting for her at the island. The surprise wasn't a pleasant one. It was the look of someone whose routine has been inconveniently disrupted. "I made dinner," I said, stating the obvious. "Oh," she said, dropping her leather briefcase on a chair. "You didn't have to." I pushed the plate towards her. "Sit down, Jen. Let's just eat." She sighed, the sound of a martyr, but sat. I waited until she had taken a few bites before I played my card. "I got a big commission today," I said, trying to keep the excitement from my voice. "Arthur Vance. He bought that humidor and hired me to do the entire interior of his new boat. It's a huge restoration project. A year of work, maybe more." I watched her face, hoping for a spark of shared joy, a flicker of the old Jen, who would have been thrilled for me. She chewed her food thoughtfully. "Vance," she mused, "that's a good connection to have. Good for you, Rowan. That's nice. That's nice." The same 2 words one might use for a child's drawing. She immediately pivoted, her energy level rising as the topic shifted back to her. "Speaking of which, I spent the entire day dealing with the logistics for Tahoe. You would not believe the speaker lineup Julian has managed to secure. We're talking about global leaders, Nobel laureates. The networking potential is off the charts. Julian thinks if we play this right, we could lock down the European distribution deal by the end of the summit." She talked for the next 20 minutes, a breathless monologue about strategy and key players and breakout sessions, all while I sat there, the news of my biggest professional achievement dissolving into nothing. She didn't ask a single follow-up question about my project. When she was done, she pushed her half-eaten plate away. "I need a shower. I've got a 7 a.m. pre-call with the London team tomorrow." She left her phone on the kitchen island and headed upstairs. I started clearing the plates, the food in my stomach feeling like a lead weight. My attempt at reconciliation had been a complete failure. Then the phone vibrated against the granite countertop. The screen lit up. My eyes, against my will, were drawn to the glowing rectangle. It was a message from Julian. I saw his name, and then the words, stark and undeniable under the bright light. "Just finalized the Tahoe itinerary. Plenty of strategic planning sessions scheduled for our suite. The lake view will have competition." The world went silent. The sound of the shower running upstairs faded into a distant hiss. I read the message again, and then a third time. Strategic planning sessions. Our suite. Competition. The smug-coded language was a confession. It was the key that unlocked everything. The fire alarm joke, the hand on her back, her cold dismissal of me. My marriage wasn't a ship taking on water. It was a shipwreck at the bottom of the ocean, and I had just been handed a photograph of the iceberg that sank it. Genevieve left for Lake Tahoe the next morning. Watching her wheel her sleek carry-on bag to the waiting airport car, I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger from the night before had cooled into a hard, clear certainty. The house was blissfully quiet. For 5 days there was no hum of corporate jargon, no sense of being an intruder in my own home. It was just me and Astrid, who seemed to exhale the moment her mother was gone. We fell into an easy, unspoken rhythm. We ate takeout on the porch. We talked about her friends and my new boat project. We didn't mention Genevieve. It was as if we were both testing out what life would feel like without her constant, demanding presence. The one phone call from Tahoe came on Wednesday evening, It was brief, perfunctory. "Hey, just checking in," she said, her voice distant, distracted. I could hear the faint clink of glasses and music in the background. "Is everything okay there? Did that package from Net-a-Porter arrive?" She didn't ask about Astrid. She didn't ask about me. She asked about a package. "Everything's fine," I said. "Package is here." "Great, it's crazy busy. I'll see you Saturday. Bye." The line went dead. That was it. I stood in the quiet kitchen, phone in hand, and knew my decision was irrevocable. The next day, I took a drive down the coast and met with a divorce lawyer. She returned on Saturday afternoon, looking incredible. She was rested, tan from the mountain sun, and glowing with an energy that was part success and part something else. She swept into the house, dropping her bags. "Oh my God, Rowan, you will not believe the week I had," she began, pulling off her sunglasses. "Julian and I cornered the CEO of Pharma Global in the lodge bar. The deal is practically done. We killed it. Absolutely killed it." She was radiating triumph, completely oblivious to the stillness in the room, to the new unbreachable distance in my eyes. I let her finish. I let her unpack the victory, piece by piece, as if displaying trophies. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke. "I'm glad you had a good trip, Genevieve," I said, my voice even, "because I filed for divorce." The triumphant glow on her face vanished as if a switch had been flipped. It was replaced by stunned disbelief, which quickly curdled into incandescent rage. "You what?" she hissed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You what? After the most important week of my career? You pull this? You are trying to sabotage me." "No," I said calmly. "I'm ending our marriage." She went crazy. It wasn't a slow burn. It was an explosion. "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, her carefully constructed poise shattering into a million pieces. "This will ruin me. The board, the optics. My personal life is supposed to be stable. It's part of the package." She started pacing, her hands gesturing wildly, the polished executive replaced by a cornered animal. "I will destroy you, Rowan. I will take everything. You will not get this house. You think you can live here without my salary? And I will take Astrid. I'll make sure she never wants to see her failure as a father again." The threats were meant to wound, to terrify me into submission, but they landed on emotional scar tissue. I felt nothing. "You can't take the house, Jen," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "My lawyer has a copy of the appraisal I had done on Thursday. We'll sell it and split the proceeds according to what the court decides is fair, which after I show them the proof of your affair, probably won't be 50-50. Her jaw dropped. "And you can't take Astrid," I continued, pressing my advantage. "She's 16, old enough to choose. And given that she barely spoke 2 words to you the entire month before you left, I think she already has." Finally, I delivered the killing blow. "As for my life, you can't ruin what's already ruined, but you should be very, very careful about yours. Julian is married, isn't he? I wonder how his wife would feel about those strategic planning sessions in your shared suite. I wonder how the board of a multi-billion-dollar company would feel about their star VP sleeping with her married boss on a company trip. You want to talk about ruining a career? Let's talk about ruining a career." My ultimatum hung in the air between us, a toxic cloud that smothered all the oxygen in the room. Genevieve's rage collapsed into a chilling, desperate calm. This was the strategist, the negotiator, taking over, the woman who saw every problem as a deal to be structured. "Okay," she said, her voice eerily level. "Okay, Rowan, let's be adults about this. What do you want?" I stared at her, uncomprehending. "I told you, a divorce." "No, that's an outcome. I'm talking about a solution," she said, starting to pace again. But this time it was calculated, like a lawyer circling a witness. "We don't have to blow everything up. We can have an arrangement. You can have the boat project. I won't touch a dime of that money. You can have your freedom. See whoever you want. I won't say a word. We just maintain the address, the image. For a year, 2 years, until this all blows over and my position is secure." She was offering me a golden cage, a life as a well-compensated ghost in my own house. The audacity of it was breathtaking. "You want me to be your live-in alibi?" I asked, my voice flat. "I don't want a sham marriage, Genevieve. I don't want to live in a lie to protect your career." "What do you care about lies?" she shot back. "You'll be comfortable. You'll be free. What difference does a piece of paper make?" "It makes all the difference," I said. "It's the difference between an honest life and this." I gestured around the room at the pristine furniture and the loveless silence. The front door opened and Astrid walked in, her dance bag slung over her shoulder. She stopped dead, her eyes darting between our rigid forms. The tension in the room was so thick you could taste it. "What's going on?" she asked warily. Genevieve's face softened instantly, a mask of maternal concern dropping into place. "Honey, your father and I are just discussing some things." It was the wrong move. The condescending tone, the transparent manipulation. Astrid saw right through it. She looked past her mother and directly at me. Her gaze was steady, her expression mature beyond her years. "I'm living with you, Dad," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. She dropped her bag by the stairs. "Whatever happens, wherever you go, I'm with you." The words struck Genevieve like a physical blow. She staggered back a step, all the air going out of her. Her face crumpled. This was the one variable she couldn't control, the one asset she couldn't leverage. She had lost her daughter, not to a court order, but by choice. The mask fell away, revealing pure, raw despair. She turned without another word and walked up the stairs like a ghost. That night, after Astrid was asleep, I sat in the dark living room, watching the moonlight on the water. A flicker of orange against the dark pines caught my eye. It was small at first, then it grew, an angry, hungry pulse in the night. My blood ran cold. I ran to the back door and saw it. My workshop, my sanctuary. It was on fire. Flames licked up the cedar siding, consuming the roof. I yelled for Astrid to call 911 and sprinted towards it, a useless fire extinguisher in hand, but it was already too late. The structure was engulfed. Standing there, watching 20 years of my life burn, a single thought cut through the panic. This was not an accident. I am meticulously careful. I never leave oily rags out. The wiring is new. I unplug every tool. This was an act of violence. This was an act of desperation. My mind flew to the broken woman upstairs, and then I remembered. Last month, after Vance had confirmed the massive project, I'd installed a small, motion-activated security camera. It was tucked up under the eaves of the house, discreetly pointed at the workshop entrance to keep an eye on the expensive lumber and tools that were being delivered. She didn't know about the camera. The wail of the fire trucks echoed across the harbor, a soundtrack to my personal apocalypse. By the time they extinguished the blaze, the workshop was a charred skeleton. The roof was gone, the walls were blackened husks, and inside was a heartbreaking jumble of melted tools and scorched wood. My beautiful maple and rosewood, the stacks of mahogany for Mr. Vance's boat, all of it was ash and charcoal. As the volunteer fire chief, a man I'd known since kindergarten, shook his head and mumbled about faulty wiring, I just nodded, a sick feeling churning in my gut. I knew it wasn't the wiring. After they left under the cold, harsh light of dawn, I went back into the house and straight to my computer. My hands shook as I accessed the security camera's cloud storage. The footage was there, triggered by motion at 2:13 a.m. A figure emerged from the shadows near the tree line. It was a young man, thin and twitchy, dressed in a dark hoodie. He moved with a nervous energy, but his face was uncovered, turned directly towards the camera for a moment as he scanned the area. He seemed completely confident that no one was watching. He splashed a liquid from a gas can around the base of the workshop, tossed a match, and then sprinted back into the woods as the first flames erupted. I didn't recognize him, but I knew someone who would. I saved the video file and called Arthur Vance. "I have a problem, Mr. Vance," I said, my voice hoarse, "and I need your help." Within an hour, I was sitting in Vance's sprawling home office, the video playing on a massive screen. Vance watched it twice without a word, his expression hardening. "I know who that is," he said finally. "Local kid, a loser named Leo. Drifts from job to job, mostly spends his time looking for trouble, has a minor record." He picked up the phone and made a call, not to the police, but to a name I didn't recognize. "Find Leo," he said into the receiver. "Bring him to me, now." By noon, the terrified, scruffy arsonist from the video was sitting in a chair across from Vance's mahogany desk. He had been found at a local dive bar, bragging about a sudden windfall. He folded in under 2 minutes of Vance's quiet, intense questioning. He pulled a thick wad of cash from his pocket and confessed he'd been paid $1,000 to start the fire. When Vance asked who hired him, the kid practically sobbed out the name. The trail didn't lead to a stranger. It led right back to my own house, right back to Genevieve. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Vance was a man who protected his investments, and I was now his investment. He saw this not just as an attack on me, but as a brazen attempt to derail his multi-million-dollar project. He unleashed the full force of his media empire. The afternoon edition of his flagship newspaper hit the stands with a banner headline, Biotech VP's bitter divorce turns criminal. Wife allegedly hires arsonist to burn husband's business. The story was everywhere. It wasn't just local news. It was a juicy high society scandal that the wire services picked up instantly. It detailed the affair, the messy divorce filings, and now the alleged arson. It painted Genevieve not as a successful executive, but as a vindictive, scorned woman willing to commit a felony to punish her husband. The narrative she had so carefully crafted for years, the powerful, stable, successful woman, was incinerated in a single news cycle, faster and more completely than my workshop had been. Her revenge had backfired in the most public way imaginable. The legal and social demolition of Genevieve's life was swift and brutal. Faced with irrefutable video evidence and a confession from her hired arsonist, she had no defense. Her high-powered corporate lawyers negotiated a plea deal that kept her out of jail, but left her financially and professionally ruined. She was charged, convicted of conspiracy to commit arson, and ordered to pay full damages for the destruction of my workshop and its contents. The amount was staggering. Almost simultaneously, the biotech firm, reeling from the scandal, severed ties with her, citing a morals clause in her contract. The news of Julian's affair, now public knowledge, got him demoted and unceremoniously transferred to a satellite office in a flyover state, a corporate exile. Our divorce was a formality, an anticlimactic end to a war that had already been won. There was no negotiation. The house on the granite ledge, the symbol of her success, was sold immediately to cover legal fees and the initial restitution payments. The life she had built, the one she'd accused me of being too small for, had vanished. With the insurance money and the first check from Genevieve, I bought a small, weathered cottage a few coves over. It needed work, but it had good bones and a detached garage that was perfect for a new beginning. Astrid moved in with me, her relief palpable. She helped me paint the walls and pick out furniture, her easy laughter filling the small rooms in a way our old house never allowed. We were building a home, not just living in a house. The rest of the restitution money went directly into rebuilding my workshop. I designed it myself, better than before, with a wall of windows overlooking the water. It rose from the ashes, literally and figuratively, a testament to resilience. Genevieve, stripped of her career, her money, and her social standing, became desperate. The calls started a month after she moved into a sterile rental apartment. Her voice was unrecognizable, no longer sharp and commanding, but thin and pleading. "Rowan, please, I made a terrible mistake. I wasn't thinking. We can fix this," she'd say. "There's nothing to fix, Jen," I'd reply, my voice tired but firm. "It's over." "But Astrid, a child needs her mother," she'd cry. "Astrid has a father who didn't try to burn down his life for spite," I would say, and then I would hang up. She didn't want the family back. She wanted the photograph back, the image of what she once had. My new life found its rhythm. By day, I worked on Arthur Vance's trawler, the Nor'easter, which was now docked just a short walk from my new cottage. The scent of fresh-cut teak and mahogany filled my new workshop. The work was demanding and beautiful, shaping raw wood into something elegant and seaworthy. The complexity of the joinery and the challenge of the design consumed me in the best possible way. It was honest work. By night, Astrid and I would eat at our small kitchen table, talking about our days, the sound of the ocean, a constant, soothing presence just outside our windows. One afternoon, standing on the deck of the Nor'easter, I was test-fitting a newly built cabinet in the galley. The fit was perfect, the wood grain seamless. I ran my hand over the smooth, oiled surface and looked out across the harbor. In the distance, I could see the roofline of my new workshop, solid and real against the pines. I had lost a marriage and a house, but I had gained my life back. I had learned that the foundation of a life isn't built from success or status or the admiration of strangers at a party. It's built from integrity. It's built with your own two hands, piece by careful piece, until you have something that's solid, something that's true, and something that can withstand any storm.